more business boosting content, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts.
All right, a very good morning to everyone, wherever you are in the country. It's always great to be back on Webinar Wednesday. It's been an exciting journey, a lot of insights, of course, a lot of engagement, and this is all about inspiring and educating business owners and entrepreneurs throughout the country. So please, wherever you are, tell us where you're from, and of course, throughout the session this morning, if you've got any questions, please pop them onto the chat. And if we don't get to answering them on the chat, we will get back to you after the webinar. But also very importantly, you will all receive a replay of this webinar like we always do. And so if you missed something, you'd like to re-look at the discussion, you are welcome to do that in your own time. But again, thank you for joining us. It's an exciting one this morning. It's always top of mind. And the topic this morning is, I love the topic, Gimme Money. And it's how to get funding ready and prepare your business for growth. Let me give you a bit of insight into that. Gimme Money is the constant heart's cry of entrepreneurs and business owners. And the fact is that money is needed, readily available. In some instances, funding could do your business more harm than the intended good that you have envisaged. So now's the time to chat with Alan Shannon of Nedbank. Of course, Nedbank is a big partner of the NSBC for many years. And Alan Shannon is not new to the NSBC. He's been with us for many years. He spends a great deal of time with us, helping business owners, entrepreneurs, small business in seminars and, of course, webinars and in various engagements. And of course, Alan, with 30 years experience in the banking industry, fulfills the role of executive head, sales strategy and enablement for the bank's relationship banking business. As always, Alan, great to have you on board. We're truly grateful for your time as always.
Great, thanks, Mike. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. I know we've had our own technical challenges building up to this morning. And everybody that's on the line, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, guys, just out there, all your attendees, please note, as we all used to it, if something goes wrong with technology this morning, fortunately, we've been pretty lucky over the past few years. The big answer to that is we'll be back. So if we lose you or you lose us, we're not going anywhere. We will keep the conversation going. And as I said earlier, you know, Alan and I over many years have spoken about funding and the challenges around funding. And like Alan says, you know, funding is readily available. And the big thing is we've got to do the right thing. We've got to behave ourselves in a way that we can access funding, and what type of funding. And like Alan says, you know, it's not always a good thing to borrow money for the right reason. And so we're going to have I've got a couple of questions that have been put forward that I'm going to talk to Alan about. But I don't know if you would like the presentation to pop up now, Alan, or if you want to just have a couple of words first.
I mean, great if we could pop the presentation up, and maybe while we're doing that, I mean, I think funding is a sort of top of mind discussion for many entrepreneurs. It's one of those sort of big pain points. And I think to the point you made a little earlier, Mike, funding, there's no scarcity of funding. There may be difficulty in accessing funding, but the one thing banks are not short of is right now is capital. And we'd like to be sort of providing more funding, but I think what hopefully will be valuable to this community is just perhaps to understand what some of the opportunities for funding are and how to go about accessing them, and who's providing funding for what. So hopefully this presentation will give a little bit more color and context to that.
Yeah, Alan, and you know as well, I mean, over years now, we're doing whatever we can to educate business owners on what they need to do to access funding. And like you say, you know, the funders, the banks like Nedbank, you want to lend money, and that's your business. And on the other side is that to really show business owners and entrepreneurs out there exactly what they need to do to access funding quickly is such a key topic. And of course, you play a major role in that, and we're truly grateful for that. And then I've got a question to pop up. First of all, tell us why you created the Simply Biz Funding Toolkit.
So, I mean, cash flow is, as I think many on the line will know, is the lifeblood of their businesses. If there's an absence of cash flow, it's actually very difficult to undertake business. And we are rightfully approached with many funding requests and to aid cash flow so that, you know, small businesses can invest in their growth. And as I mentioned a little earlier on, there's no shortage of money, but maybe a shortage of understanding around how to go about accessing those funding capabilities that exist with banks and other players. And the funding toolkit was created specifically to try and address that, and importantly, to provide and steps that they could be undertaking to try and get some of the answers that perhaps are not readily available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that our team is going to pop the Simply Biz site on the screen just now so that they can access that. And of course, what is the first step that entrepreneurs need to consider before approaching potential investors like Nedbank?
So I think the first thing is actually first figuring out what is the purpose of the funding, and the funding could be required for multiple purposes. It could be starting up, it could be fueling the growth. So figuring that out is critically important. It's the first question a funder will ask: is what is the purpose behind the funding request? So be clear on that. Then I think also what's important is for entrepreneurs to be able to provide a track record and to give funders how long they believe it's going to take to repay or make a return on the funding. So, I mean, that would perhaps be, the first step that any entrepreneur needs to give consideration to.
All right. Now, Alan, you mentioned that there is no shortage of available money. Why do you say this?
Well, because it's true. there are numerous funders available to entrepreneurs. As banks, let me give you an example. Nedbank, and some of you that sort of follow the financial press will have heard that Nedbank actually bought 5 billion rands worth of its own shares back recently because we had excess capital. And, so that excess capital essentially is there to be put to use. The country's, growth trajectory has been slow. So the demand for funding hasn't been particularly high, certainly relative to years gone by. And so we have these balance sheets, and as banks, that's our purpose, is provide funding. We have these balance sheets sort of waiting to sort of extend more funding too. But I think the big but is we've got to do it in a way that's responsible because we've got our own shareholders to protect. So it's fair to claim that banks are often conservative in their funding approach. But if you know how to navigate the banks and know what they require, then more often than not, you will get the funding. We're not the only ones, of course, that are in the funding space. There's fintechs, there's venture capitalists, there's angel funders. There's all types of people sort of playing in the funding space, but there's no shortage of money available to provide funding. Like I said, the big trick is perhaps understanding how to access it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before the next question, I just want to remind the attendees out there that a big part of the Business Show Africa coming up on the 4th and 5th of September is, of course, funding. And besides the Nedbank Speed Networking Zone, where you play a major role, we know one of the biggest needs and wants of a business owner is B2B networking. And once again, we're truly grateful that Nedbank has sponsored the Speed Networking Zone. And not only that, of course, the Build a Business Live seminars, where you play a major role there, Alan, as one of our keynote speakers on funding. So for all of our attendees out there, if you haven't as yet registered for the Business Show Africa, it's sponsored. The tickets are free. Please get your registration in. There it is, the bizshow.africa. After the webinar this morning, please register. It's going to be an absolute epic event. We're right now on track to be the biggest B2B event in the world. And, many attendees who join us at the Business Show Africa will say what they gain over 2 days, they couldn't gain over 10 years. So it's a must attend for business owners and entrepreneurs, and also importantly, aspiring entrepreneurs who are serious about starting out. Get your free ticket. It's the place to be, and it's, of course, how to get ahead. And coming to the next question, Alan, what do entrepreneurs need to put in place to be considered for funding?
So again, I think it depends on who you're seeking to access funding from. But the one thing that certainly as banks, we will ask you right at the outset is, can we see your financial statements? And I think there's a reason for that, because those give us a insight into your trading history, how successful you are at making use of your cash flow and turning a profit, and also gives us a good sense as to what your future prospects would be if we were to unlock some of those prospects by providing funding into your organization. So financials, put them in place. They're critically important. Any financial institution is going to ask you for them. If you're not a financial person yourself, seek the services of an accountant. And I know that's sometimes comes at a cost, but I think given the importance of funding to your business, it's more often than not a cost that is going to be worth your while. Sit with them, work through your budgets and your financials, take to understand the story that your balance sheet and your income statement is telling you as an entrepreneur. I mean, I think the other thing that perhaps, well, not perhaps, that I know for sure, banks place a lot of emphasis on is how well does the entrepreneur understand their own financials. And unfortunately, it often happens that understanding of the financial makeup of the company is not always what it could be. And I think that's sort of when it is what it should be, it builds a lot of confidence in the financial institution that we're dealing with someone that's really got their finger on the pulse from a financials point of view. What's important to us is, are you making a profit? Are you making a loss? Will the funding aid or hamper your business? I mean, funding is there to help you accelerate your growth. It's not there to fund future losses. I think the other thing, Mike, is it's important for any small business to create a compelling and realistic business plan. And I think I want to emphasize the word realistic, because as entrepreneurs, you're opportunistic, you're optimistic by nature. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have entered into the realm of entrepreneurship. And often optimism can, and for bankers, it comes through clearly when we see projections, when something is being presented in an overly optimistic fashion versus a realistic fashion. And that has the potential of getting you into slight trouble if you're overly optimistic around your projections and they don't materialize. Because then your credibility with whoever it is that you're looking for funding from starts, being diluted. Whereas no matter how conservative your plan is, if it's realistic, and we can see that the reality is playing out in much the same way as that you had projected it would, that gains you a whole ton of credibility and sort of opens the door for further funding when that next request comes through. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context, Mike, as to what we as financial institutions sort of seek out from small businesses when approaching us.
Yeah, and I remember, Alan, in my last meeting I had with you at Nedbank head office in Rivonia Road, there we spent some time on this, and where in our last national small business survey, very, very few business owners check their credit scores frequently. And in fact, it's almost 95% of business owners don't even check their credit scores once a year. And that's what we also encourage. We're on a massive drive to help, together with Nedbank, for business owners to become financially fit. And of course, we work closely with Experian on this as well, a big drive. And really, and that's it, you'll show your ability to repay the loan. And like you say, a proper business plan and a realistic drive. And then, of course, that's it. The point is you show your affordability. I remember you mentioned that to me, Alan. Your affordability, your credit scores, not only for your business, but for yourself. Do it every 3 months. To get your credit report is free. So we certainly encourage business owners out there to make sure that they, and what's also important about your credit score is that you can fix it. If something is wrong there, it can be fixed quite quickly. So please make a habit of checking your credit score, show your affordability, the ability to repay the loan, get your financials in order. And because like Alan says, Nedbank wants to lend money. That's their business. So we've got to look behind the scenes in preparing ourselves and behave ourselves in a way that we can access funding. Yeah. Now, Alan, importantly, what is one mistake that business owners make once they have received the funding?
I think it's sometimes, Mike, around the discipline applied on how they put that funding to use. So, and this is where, it's really important to be, sticking to the plan, because other things will arise that you perhaps didn't foresee or plan for. And all of a sudden, the funding that's been provided is sort of solving for that. And I mean, I think people need to guard against that. I think the big thing is sort of stick to the plan as best you can, and apply the funding for the purposes that it was being used. So I think that's probably the single biggest thing that we encounter as a problem, I guess, once funding's already been applied. Just want to check, Mike, the screen's frozen. Are you still with me?
I'm with you.
Okay, great. Sorry.
I'm with you. Okay, so yeah, and of course another important question is that they're from Gideon. He's just asking a question. I would like to know more about tender funding or purchase order funding. I'm not sure if you can give a bit of insight into that.
Yeah, so purchase order funding is actually something that the commercial banks have yet to really catch up on. There's organizations out there that do provide purchase order funding. A couple of names come to mind. It may not be the platform to talk about who they are specifically, but I think they've carved out a nice niche for themselves. It's expensive funding because that type of funding typically is priced at a percentage of the gross profit that is made when they facilitate and provide funding for the specific transaction. But certainly, I think these purchase order financiers provide a valuable service specifically for the company that's trying to get themselves off the ground, that can't solicit funding from perhaps more traditional mechanisms like banks, because they're in the early startup phase. So they've got a good place. They're not cheap. I think use them to the extent that you need to, until you get to the point where you become become fundable by a commercial enterprise. Banks are going to be your cheapest form of funding, unless you've got someone who's very generous in your family who's not going to charge you interest. But they've got a place. Use them until you become fundable by a commercial bank, at which point in time I think you can move on from the purchase order financiers.
And then question, sixth question: how does Nedbank assist to bring in this financial discipline?
So I think Simply Business is probably a good example of that. So we will first of all give you, I think, the educational material and the tools that you need through something like Simply Biz. In addition to that, Nedbank is hooked up to organizations like Xero and Sage Accounting, where your bank statement integrates, or your banking account integrates with your accounting system. And because it does that, it does automatic feeds, and it gives you a good sense from one day to the next around how your sort of business is faring and stacking up, which in itself should help you to sort of instill the type of discipline into your business. And then I think maybe thirdly is every business that banks with Nedbank gets allocated a relationship banker. And that relationship banker is there to essentially, one, make sure that they understand your business, what the needs from a funding or investment or transacting perspective are, and delivers against those. But they're also there to provide advice. So, if you're looking to sort of test whether you're sort of on the right track, at least in terms of how we see things as a bank, and figure out whether, the disciplines that you ought to have in place are there, you're always able to reach out and engage your relationship banker with Nedbank, and they will hopefully set you on the right course.
Absolutely. And also, you just touched on that a few seconds ago. What's also vitally important is financial compliancy. This is what I mean by saying is that you should have, and it's inexpensive, cloud accounting. You've got to get your financials in order. And like Alan mentioned, Sage and Xero is there, of course. And of course, if you need assistance on cloud accounting, you can contact us at the NSBC, info@nsbc.africa, and we can give you more insight into that. And importantly, to be financially compliant, so that you can prepare financials and management accounts the way that not only for the funders, but also for you as a business. If you're financially compliant, you've got your foundation to build your castle. And the days have gone by when other systems are certainly not as effective as cloud accounting is today. And of course, and what's important about that is that it's easy to operate, even if you're not a financial person, you can operate that. And so we certainly urge you to do that. Alan, from your side, any closing remarks or words?
No, I mean, I would encourage, simplybiz.co.za, and it's biz with a Z, I think is a phenomenal resource. We've put a lot of effort into trying to provide small businesses with access to networking, with access to the tools that help them not only figure out, how to navigate the funding environment, but also just how to navigate business. I mean, within that environment is the Business Essentials Guide to Small Business. That covers things from compliance to tax to, of course, funding to, how to make the best use out of your relationship with your bank. It's a phenomenal environment, and I would sort of urge you all to make use of it. It's free, so you don't even need to be a Nedbank client to be able to access that environment, although it's us that's sort of the power behind it. We would, of course, love to attract more of you to become banked with Nedbank, because we feel the value that we offer obviously goes well beyond that which simply Biz provides you. But use that environment. It's a good tool to use. On the Nedbank front, I mean, I think we're proud of some of the recent awards that have been provided to us as the best SME bank. I think by Asian Bank, I think is the one that gave us the accolade recently. We've also recently become the next bank of choice for people that are giving consideration to leaving their existing bank. And so if ever you're in that situation, we would welcome you with warm arms into the Nedbank fold and see how we can go about assisting your business. But I think for us, from our side, Mike, it's really just make use of the tools. If you feel you'd like to engage us more deeply, please reach out to us. Also, very welcome to look me up in LinkedIn, and I will do my best to respond to you. I will follow you. I will also, if you've got any particular inquiries, make sure that we deal with those in an appropriate way, and get people to reach out for you if that's something you'd like us to do.
A question before we depart, Alan, and if anybody else has got any more questions, please pop them on in closing. But this is always a tough one. I've just started my business. I don't have any financial records. How do I get a bank loan? I know it's a tough one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound like the prophet of doom here, but in that type of scenario, there's no way of saying this softly. You're very unlikely to secure a bank loan from a commercial bank. In that type of context, you're sort of looking for the type of the angel investor, the friend, the family member, the person who loves your idea, that's prepared to put some capital into it. The way banks open margins, we attract deposits in, and let's say hypothetically, to make the numbers, easy to understand, we pay interest rates of 10%. On average, we would lend that same money out at 12 to 13%. So we've got a 3% margin through which obviously we need to manage our bad debt. We need to run the bank. We need to pay all our salaries. And of course, we still need to make a return to our shareholders. So with those type of margins, funding brand new enterprises presents too much risk at the outset, at least, for us to be able to protect the bank's balance sheet. So it's angel investors that are probably, and maybe even crowdfunders. These are sort of some of the other funding mechanisms. Crowdfunding's actually, I think, the last decade has taken some hold. And I think crowdfunding is about, finding a crowdfunding platform. We've worked with a couple ourselves, putting your idea onto that environment, and the general public takes a view on your idea and, essentially deploys capital to you to make use of, to get your business on its feet. And one of the things that the crowdfunders themselves require in return is the use of your product or the use of your service. So, there's other mechanisms other than bank. They've all got their pros and cons. But banks are, generally speaking, really not well geared to deal with the brand new startup.
Let me add to that, Alan. Amanda, good to see you on the screen. Amanda, executive from CIPC, a great partner of the NSBC, of course. And also, just to give insight, Nedbank is also a big funder, sponsor of the Launch My Startup initiative. And I actually do a lot of talks to startups on this issue. And I also write a book on it, how to start a business with no money. And one's got to get your head around that and say, right, I can't borrow money. Let me do in my business anything that I don't need money, and take the magic of tiny steps. Take tiny steps and get to where you need to be. Build up credibility. And in time, when you need money to grow your business and you've got a track record, that's how you borrow money. But my encouragement out there is, I can't get money, so let me think differently, change my mindset, adopt the magic of tiny steps, and move forward until I've got myself in shape to be able to borrow money based on my history. And like you say, Alan, I'm honest about it. You're not going to borrow money to start a business. We've got no financial record. You know, those days have gone by, not only in South Africa but globally. It's a global phenomenon. But it doesn't mean to say that you can't succeed as a business owner. You can certainly move towards that from that side. But any more questions from out there? We've got a great audience this morning. There we go. Quick question for CIPC. If my company is deregistered, how can I get it back? Contact NSBC. We will help you with that. Of course, we get that question a lot. And just off the topic slightly, just make sure that you do your annual return for CIPC. Otherwise, and rightly so, it will be deregistered. So please do that. But yeah, so to Alan, to Nedbank, don't forget, guys out there, please join us at the Business Show Africa. Alan is one of our keynote speakers. There's the Access to Finance Zone, the Build a Business Live seminar and masterclass series, the Nedbank Speed Networking Zone. It's going to be an absolute extravaganza of entrepreneurship. So please join us. Alan, a great friend to the NSBC, to Small Business South Africa. We truly are grateful for your time, and to Nedbank for being one of our big partners at the NSBC. I'm not saying goodbye for the last time, many more times coming, but thank you for your insights.
It's a pleasure, Mike. Thanks for the opportunity to chat to you and to your membership. Thank you.
Thank you. And guys, please watch the video ending off. Thank you very much.
Come on.
Content. Subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts. Content. Subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts.